Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, Justin.
It's our next podcast episode.
That's right. So we are excited to come to you today, and we're going to cover People Scout of Phoenix. And I am going to pick Justin's brain so I can hear a little bit more of what this is and some lessons learned and some different perspectives and stuff on that whole experience.
Lots of all of that, I promise.
Good. So I can tell by the name that People Scout is in the recruiting business. Am I correct?
Yes, that is correct. They are an outsourced recruiting firm. They call it RPO, Recruitment Process Outsourcing, and other corporations who may not have the desire to build a huge HR team and recruiting team will hire another company to do recruiting on their behalf.
Wow. Okay. So they're not a current client of yours at APG, correct?
They are not. I worked with People Scout a few years ago. I was with Solemn Consulting for many, many years. They're an international consulting firm, great company, still love them. I left Solemn because I was ready for more of the startup life, and I went to a startup, and it didn't work out. But I enjoyed the People Scout experience while I was with that startup. It was a startup consulting firm. I learned a lot, and then eventually founded APG Emerging Tech, where we work now. So it all worked out in the end. But no, they are not currently a client, but I love drawing inspiration from past projects.
Yeah, so it really is coming into that. I think it's important to lean in on your past experiences. And before starting APG, after all, that is what makes you well-rounded and valuable as a consultant.
Right. I mean, that's why you hire consultants, is their breadth of experience. And no one would hire us at APG in the early days if we had 1 month of experience. That just wouldn't happen. So we have to lean on these past experiences. All of us do.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about People Scout and what you designed for them.
Yeah. So as a recruitment process outsourcing firm, they are incented to fill open positions. That's how they get paid, right? If you have open positions and you never fill them, what's the point in paying them to do anything, right? So they're incented to very quickly get people hired and into roles. This Phoenix platform was something that was a back of the napkin idea, which are some of my favorites. And my role on this was being the facilitator and also designer of this new platform. People Scout used a ton of different systems to facilitate the recruiting process. They had a video interviewing platform. They had an applicant tracking system. They had marketing systems, all of these different things, but they didn't talk to one another. There was a huge systems integration opportunity. And beyond just integrating these systems, we thought, well, let's create a platform, an actual platform that is packaged and sold, which ultimately they branded it a Phoenix. So a Phoenix, I think it's cool. I'm a big nerd, so I think this is cool. The purpose of Phoenix was for high volume recruiting. An example of high volume recruiting is Avis Rent-A-Car. They need thousands of employees to move cars between airports and rental locations. You know, Atlanta Airport may get socked full of rental cars and they don't have enough demand. They need to move them to Charlotte instead. They pay people to move those cars. There aren't a lot of requirements for that other than a clean driving record and probably a clean criminal history. Otherwise, you don't need to do a face-to-face interview and hire someone based on their personality. Can you drive and will you get it there? That's about it. So that's a high volume recruit. A Phoenix is the platform that could facilitate everything from posting the job through hiring without a human being involved.
Wow.
So Avis Rent-A-Car posts, I need drivers, I need 500 drivers, feeds into a Phoenix. A Phoenix, through automation, posted the jobs, collected the applications, processed the applications, did the background checks, all of the other steps involved, and all the way through to offer letter and onboarding without a human touching it.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. And that seems very streamlined with a lot of what that is.
You wouldn't use it for hiring physicians. You wouldn't use it for hiring a newscaster. I mean, there's so many roles you would never use a Phoenix for. But there's so many roles you would use a Phoenix for.
That's a huge example. I mean, that's a perfect example to be able to allow all of us to understand exactly what that was.
Yeah.
So what was the problem that you were there to solve?
The biggest one was the whole swivel chair activity of I've got 3 monitors in front of me as a recruiter for People Scout, and I have to go to this system for this, that system for that, and duplicate data entry. And as soon as you start duplicating data entry manually, stuff's going to get messed up. So it was really around that, plus being able to help People Scout have a new line of revenue of these high volume recruits that they never had before. They didn't have the personnel or the staff to do that. Now the robot helped them do it.
That's huge. So what did the team composition look like?
This was a full-fledged product development team in terms of we had product owner, designer, architects, database architects, software engineers, as well as the business that we were working with, the business stakeholders who were the subject matter experts in all of these platforms. Then throw in third-party vendors that we were integrating with. And it was a huge population to facilitate. As the leader on the project, I had at least 20 parties to integrate with at any given time to pull together to make this thing happen.
Wow. So it sounds like a complex puzzle in a sense.
Yes.
So being able to piece those together and being able to really fully understand this and wrap our head around it, what were the big pieces of the puzzle?
Biggest pieces were the components of the Phoenix were really, really cool. So there was the ATS, which is an applicant tracking system. Every application that gets submitted online goes into an applicant tracking system. Makes sense, right? There's the CRM, which is a candidate relationship management system. Think of that as your outward-facing website that posts the job and makes it look attractive and explains all the benefits and makes you want to apply to it.
Right.
So that starts it, goes into an applicant tracking system. A logical layer graded and scored each applicant to bring them up in terms of best fit, not as good of a fit, terrible fit. There was automation to go and do their background checks based on the information you gave. Just a preliminary check of, is there a Justin Cullifer or Lindsay Duval in the criminal records? Right. And we could do that. And a lot of early AI was brought into it, even to help refine job descriptions that got posted online to make sure they were gender neutral, which is a big deal. You don't want to put in a lot of words that make it sound like this is totally geared toward a man or totally geared toward a woman. It's nice to have it gender neutral. Making sure that that the scoring of the candidates was fair and it wasn't based upon possible biases like race or gender. It was based upon qualifications, location, education, things like that. So it was really, really cool to learn about all of these components and pull them in together.
Yeah. I mean, just being able to know that system was able to do that, but also give everybody a fair chance.
That's right.
That's the big thing is what I'm taking out of that. So that's huge. And then you just don't feel like it's, oh, well, just because it's this or that, I can't apply for it. It's really on your skill set and what do you actually fit in to get this job done if we were to hire you.
That's right. That's exactly it.
Okay. So how did your past experiences, some of which you've discussed in earlier episodes of this podcast, influence your approach to this client and project?
Well, in an earlier podcast, we talked about this Thesis Profit product. It was my first software as a service SaaS product. And I talked about how you have your base workflow and then you have your configurable aspects. That totally informed this because this was though we were stitching together existing platforms that did discrete functions, ultimately a Phoenix was a new platform and it had to have a base workflow and then the customizations at different points along the journey. So I was a huge proponent of building in configurability that you or I could log in and do. We could set business rules and parameters. Do you need a high school diploma? Do you need a college degree? Being able to turn these flags on and off ourselves without having to go to a developer. I was a little disappointed that some, decisions were made on this particular product to lean into speed instead of building it in these configurations in the right way the first time. If I could go back in time, and I know you'll ask me this later, but if I could go back in time, I would be even more direct in my encouragement to build it the right way the first time.
Yeah, so let's just elaborate on that a little bit then. Of just like, if you knew then what you know now, what would you have done differently?
That's the biggest one. At APG, our two core values are empathy and stewardship. Stewardship was definitely born out of this experience as well as many others, but I want to make sure the clients are spending their money wisely and that they're building the right product the first time and that they're not setting themselves up for rework later down the road. Not every company operates from that perspective, just plain and simple. And that's why it's important to me. I want to do right by people. And in this particular case, I would have gone back in time in the time machine and said, stick to your guns. You know in your gut the right thing to do is to coach this client to build it the right way, because you can predict. You've been here before. You know this. 6 months from now, what are they going to be doing? Rebuilding it. Mm-hmm. And I would have been more adamant about that, especially knowing that I wouldn't have stayed with that startup. No. I know that now. I didn't know that then, but would have totally done that and been more insistent.
Yeah, but that's another lesson learned.
Totally.
That's another thing. That's another feather in your cap that you know what to do, what not to do. Follow your instinct is what it sounds like to me. And really being able to trust your gut and really try to push yourself to make sure that those are done.
You have to trust your gut. You have to. And I have more confidence now just in general as a person to trust my gut than I did then. And certainly more then than I did 10 years before that. So it's a growing and a learning activity. Nobody's perfect. That's why time machines would be a lot of fun. I think we would all be hopping in the time machine, but that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
I know it now, and I'm applying it to our clients today.
That's right. So when you worked on this, it was during a brief stint with a small startup consulting firm, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So how did lessons from this startup firm influence what you've built and accomplished with APG?
Core values. So I left Slalom, which is a company I adored and still adore. They're great folks. And joined this startup. And the interesting thing about it was it wasn't my company. I joined a startup. So I had to hop aboard someone else's vision for how they wanted to operate culturally, ethically, from a business sense, all of these different dynamics. I was hopping aboard their train and buying into them, which is not dissimilar than any of us when we go work for any company, right?
That's what you signed up for.
That's what you signed up for. That's right. Yeah. So I got what I signed up for. I think I was a little naive thinking, well, it's small and it's a startup and I'm the third person at the company. I can have an effect on this and really help mold the direction. And just the dynamics of the people involved, that wasn't going to happen. And that's okay. That's A-okay. They, it was their train. They built the train and put it on the tracks, and it was theirs to conduct. But I also had the wisdom and the intelligence to say, this is not for me. I want to do something different and better. So those experiences helped inform our core values. Our core values are, this, Lindsay, they're brought up in every meeting we have.
All the time. Every
single meeting and decision we make comes back to those two main core values of empathy and stewardship. So, yeah, I'd say that startup absolutely informs what we're doing today and what we have today and is serving us really well.
Yeah. And I mean, it still sounds like following your gut. Again, of just being able to stay true to who you are. And then again, those lessons learned along the way that sets you up for a success later on down the road and for longevity. And that's going to be what benefits us 5 years in.
And that's the thing. And, I have to catch myself sometimes when I look at LinkedIn, especially. How do we measure success? How you measure success is different than how I measure success. In the consulting general space, there are measures of success that are kind of generally known and out there. And I have to catch myself when I read through LinkedIn and I see certain things from other companies, and I catch myself and say, well, why aren't we doing that? Are we failing because we're not doing that? And I bring it back to my definition of success is just different. It's just different. What allows me to put food on the table and sleep well at night is different than other people. And that's okay.
And that's okay. And we would love to be able to hear from you guys what your definition of success is, or what that looks like for you.
I think that'll be a podcast.
Because I think that's going to be interesting to be able to see what other people will say about that.
Yeah, totally. You know, I've run my mouth on these podcast episodes, but there are others who will be making appearances.
Yep.
So get ready.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lindsay. Have a good one.
Ta-da.